Probably going to spike to 90, but I'm not worried about it right now. And there it goes. It's in the 60s. It's yellow. Looks like it might be working itself out.
That's so weird.
So the way I have my screen broken up now, it's fantastic. There's a big me on the bottom, an even bigger you above me, and then a tiny me at the very top.
Yeah, all I see is the very, very tiny me down in the bottom corner, and then you.
Right. Yeah, this is good. Does anybody watch this live stuff anyway? What's the difference?
I don't know.
All right, youtube.com/woodtalk/live.
Maybe I'll log in and watch us.
Yeah, go ahead. Don't even worry about the show.
Sweet.
It still says 10th anniversary show.
I love it.
I got to change that somewhere. I don't know where that's locked down at. It might be. It's got to be in my Wirecast settings.
Yeah,
somewhere.
I was gonna say you're probably using the same stream key.
I am. Yeah.
Actually, you may do that on YouTube.
Let's check that out then. It's all
because
confusing.
You're just using the go live now setting, so the stream key and all that stuff stays the same. So I think you just have to change the info.
Yeah. You know what? That's right. I haven't changed it on YouTube in a long time, and I think that's why. I'm going to go back there and change it. But I'm not worried about it now because guess what? All year it's our 10th anniversary.
I was going to say, you're good until next April.
That's what people do, right? We're fine. Mm-hmm. All right. Yeah, I'm just being greedy. I want more space, guys. Shannon's big, but there are 2 of me. So I think that evens out. Well, I should go back and change the title on these things. Hey, this is fantastic. So the live stream has just gone live, like 2 seconds ago, right? Someone has already given it a thumbs down, which means there's a moron out there who subscribes to us, gets a notification that we're live just so they can thumb us down. And to me...
Hurry, gotta go do it.
Yeah, that sounds like a very sad person, if you ask me.
Wow.
And I hope they're enjoying the show.
I kind of want to get to know that person just to figure out, what did they get out of that?
What's the mental game going on in their head that this is a valuable use of their time? I don't see it.
I foresee a cubicle.
Yes, someone who's very upset that they have to work and answer to someone else.
I am happy to have provided that little bit of sunlight for them.
Yes, something. Hey, it was something to do today, right? Because otherwise there's nothing else going on.
Gotta keep my my eye on those notifications, just so that I can thumbs down them.
Yep, that's the good stuff. Right, I think we should do a show now.
Okay.
Where is my recording?
Or 3.
Where's the recording thing? Hold up.
It's that big circle.
Is that big red circle button?
Yeah.
375. Yeah, we are matless today, folks. We'll talk about it on the show. Catch you guys up. Arm that track. Oh, I have to sneeze. Pollen is high today, baby.
Samuel in the chat room says that it was probably Matt that gave us a thumbs down.
It is. You know what? You know what would be fun is if you could, just like you see thumbs up and stuff on Facebook, if they allowed you to see who does the thumbs down.
What would be the incidence of thumbs downs disappearing, I wonder, without the cloak of anonymity?
I don't know. Here's what I find. People who are a-holes kind of don't care if you know who they are. You know what I mean? Like they're a-holes and they're a-holes in their private life and they're a-holes online. So they just get to be a-holes everywhere.
I thumbs down and you'll like it.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so getting a couple of things queued up here in case we need them. Like,
flabbergasted.
Why didn't it work? All right, so you can't hear my audio through the thingamajiggy, can you? You guys get to hear all the fun pre-show stuff here. Sorry. We got to do what we got to do. Let's see if you can hear it now.
Slabbergasted.
Okay, you did hear it then. Good.
Yes. That was the voices in my head, wasn't it?
No, actually, I never hit play, so I'm not sure what you're hearing.
Cup-o slab.
All right, I think we're good now. Jay Hill Woodcraft says, it's better Cremona's not here. Everyone hates that guy anyway.
Jeez.
All right.
It's good that we've fostered such a loving and supporting community around Wood Talk.
It really is. It really is.
The amount of trash talk has gone up significantly in the last couple of years. You gotta love it.
It really has. It's a little out of control, but I like it. Okay, here we go.
Welcome to Wood Talk, turning woodworkers into knitters since 2007. Here are your hosts, Mark, Shannon, and Matt.
All right, it is Wood Talk number 374 for April 17th, 2017. On today's show, we're talking about if the finish is ruined once it starts curing in the can and giving up on a tool or a project. We'd also like to thank some folks who helped us out, Pete Bauer and a bunch of folks on Patreon, and by a bunch, I mean 3, Terry, Battisti, and I'm not even going to say this one because it's inappropriate. And you know how sometimes we can get away with it? This one, I don't feel like we can really get away with it. I'm just going to call him DR. And let's see, Joshua as well. So thank you so much for your support, everyone. And if you want to help us out, you can too. Go to patreon.com/woodtalk and found out we've got 5 levels? I can't remember. But you could sign up for different levels and get a bunch of different things in return for your patronage. And we appreciate that support. Now,
none of them are a free microwave.
That's true. You don't get a free microwave. You don't get a free football phone. Nothing like that. Nothing cool like that.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah. And let's see. So we want to also send a quick shout out to our buddy Matt Cremona, who is not here on the show today because he's at the hospital with his wife and little baby Max, who had surgery. And if you follow Matt online, you probably know some of the details. We're not going to go into that, but it sounds like the surgery was a success and they are all recuperating and cuddling. And man, I'll tell you, this stuff, it tears at me. Lindsay posted a picture right before Max went into surgery.
That was heartbreaking.
Yeah, I was driving my kids to school, and Nicole was with me, and both of us are like, "Okay, let's get them into school. This is fine." You know, it was definitely a tear-jerking moment. But I'm really glad to hear everything turned out okay. Matt texted me earlier and said everything is okay. So so far so good. Wishing them luck, and let's do a show.
Okay, then.
Yes. So what's on the bench? For me, I've been turning some drawings into templates and getting ready to do a chair prototype for the guild. And it's a lot of fun, but a lot of responsibility. You know, it's nice when someone gives you templates and you could just start building something. But when you have to make the templates, stakes go up a little bit. You know, it's a little bit more nerve-wracking. But cool thing was working with Brian Benham, and he's the guy who does all the plans behind the guild and the Wood Whisperer right now. Mm-hmm. And I drew everything up on some scaled paper, so basically 1 inch with a 1/4 inch grid and the bowl line at every inch. And he said, look, if you can get me an overhead shot, try to get it as clean as possible so there's as little skewing as possible, get a picture, and then I'll be able to take it into whatever programs he uses to actually produce the template and get it into SketchUp. So I did all that, tried my best. And he goes, yeah, I'm not sure if it worked out. I had to approximate some curves. So he sends it to me, and now it's in like a 4-page printout PDF that you could do on any inkjet printer. So cut it all out, lined up all the lines, taped it together, and then I cut the whole template out. And you would not believe how accurate this thing was. I basically put it on top of my drawing, and it perfectly just covered my pencil lines. So, wow. Yeah, it was like a very cool process, and I wish I had the time to do that aspect of it, but right now it's just so much easier for me to hand that off to somebody else. But it was very cool to see what we can do with these crazy curves. Like, how do I tell somebody? Well, he used to live a long ways away, but now he's in Colorado, and now I am too. So anyway, but still, I'm not going to drive to the guy. So how do I send him a digital representation of these curves that I just basically pulled out of my, and put onto a piece of paper? How do I get those accurately represented? Well, the photograph. That was all we needed to make that happen, and then some software and a smart guy behind it. So I was super impressed with it. I thought that was a pretty cool process to do.
I'd be curious to find out what he's using. I know Adobe has several capture.
I think he said Illustrator
programs
initially.
Okay, because they even have. I've done that a couple of times. I had to create a vector graphic of the logo and everything we have on the side curtains of one of our trucks, 18-wheelers, and it was done so long ago. Of course, nobody has any idea who did it, right, where any of the assets are. So I'm like, okay, let's see if I can do this. And Adobe has a thing where you can literally just import a picture, and it traces it and gives you an EPS document out of it. And I'll be damned. 2 tractor trailer curtain sides later, and it's like, wow, that looks exactly the same when it pulls up next to it. And all I did was take a picture and hit go on the button, and it spit out, a vector graphic. I was like, this is just awesome.
Nice. Can't beat that. Well,
it's got to come bad for real graphic designers.
Right. You make it a little bit too easy.
Right.
But yeah, so I mean, it was a really cool process, and now we get to actually distribute those to guild members and let them play with it a little bit.
See, my issue with something like this, though, is you haven't built the chair yet.
Nope.
So like, I mean, how many times does something change while you're building the project? And it's like, oh, you know what? I'm going to shave a little bit of that curve because it suits better or it looks better in the long run. And, then you go to all this trouble.
Well, I'll tell you, this is the third iteration before it even made it to Brian. I drew my first one up multiple times. I would let a day or two go by, then I would look at it again and give myself some time off from it, go back to it, and I would get, something's not right here. Let me see if I could fix that. So it already has gone through at least that level of sort of brain filtration, if you will. But there's still the what does this thing actually look like test.
Right.
And because there's two profiles, there's the front and the side profile. So it isn't until, which is the next step, is to give him my overhead frame shot and just show him how these things go together. So I emailed him today and said, hey, can you, when you can, get the 3D leg built, make sure I have the legs, rotate them to the proper angle and put them together with the frame pieces and the front legs. Let me see what that looks like, because that's going to tell me a lot. And that's actually one of the ways that, something like SketchUp is fantastic, because while it's not perfect, I'll be able to look at that and get a gut feeling as to whether I'm even anywhere in the ballpark of where I want to be. And then, of course, the last test is to build the dang thing and then say, oh, that sucks. Let's change that.
Right. Retcon.
Yeah. So that's actually nice. What makes this build unique is that I'm not promising that in the end I'm going to have the perfect solution. I'm showing them how we do this. And in the end, if there is a lesson learned, like, hey, let's shave a little off here, let's do that. By the end, they will have a finished version of it. And then I'm going to build like 5 more of the finished version. Right. But they're going to see the way you go through this and make the prototype and then make adjustments. But they have all the tools that they need to actually build the final version, even though they sort of went on the journey with me. So just kind of a unique presentation out of the norm.
I like how you rationalize that.
That's what I'm telling myself anyway. So, hey, nice. I could sell ice to an Eskimo, man. It's I'm pretty good at it. No, but seriously, I think it's going to be fun. And realistically, with a chair, if you just go in blind and build a chair, that's probably not going to be the most comfortable or best looking thing you could make. You kind of do have to make a prototype unless you have a proven something in front of you that you're just extracting info from. So we did a little bit of both with the prototype I'm making. I feel fairly confident it's going to be good and may only need minor tweaks before we call it the final version. And the last thing I'll mention real quick is Nicole was in the shop and she turned a funnel accidentally. So she was making a bowl, and she's got this whole thing she did with our Patreon campaign for the Wood Whisperer, where she's going to actually give a bowl to one of the top tier people. And it's the first time she's done it in over 10 years. So she's getting back into it, and she just went a little bit too far and cut that blank right out of the chuck and has a nice bowl with a hole in it. So what I'm going to do, because I think it's still usable, I'm going to take a bit of figured figured walnut, because I know how you like walnut and maple mixed together in the same project.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we're going to, I'm basically going to plane the walnut down and actually just try to epoxy the bowl with the hole on it and just kind of have her make a little bit of a lipped base around so she can continue to push through the top layer and go into that walnut layer. And on the outside, it'll just kind of have this, cove, sort of a bullnose effect piece of trim all the way around that will be the base. And hopefully it'll be salvageable. We'll see.
See, I think you should have embraced it. Since we've got the whole, Lindsay bringing Matt donuts, you could one-up her and say, Nicole made a donut.
That's right. She made me a wooden donut.
Hard maple donut. Take that, Lindsay.
Yep. See that.
That would have been...
missed opportunity, I guess. But what's going on with you?
This was one of those. It was a long weekend for Easter weekend. We were closed Good Friday and everything, so I was staring down the barrel of no significant plans. Brunch with the family on Easter, but really, kind of that was it. Going, man, I got a lot of shop time. I've got all these projects I need to do, but honestly, I needed to take a step back and have some me time. Do some stuff for me. You guys have heard me. Well, you guys, you.
Yes.
Matt, when you're listening to this, I'm thinking of you. You guys. You guys have heard me mention the whole track lighting thing in my shop for a while. And I've had the parts, and I've even had one of the tracks installed. But it's just one of those things where if I take time to install that track lighting, I'm taking time away from the stuff that I'm building for the school or for the Renaissance Woodworker. But I just decided I was going to do it. And I got all my track lighting up. And again, sticking with the same theme that I've shared in the past, anytime you've got a DIY project, it just takes for flipping ever to do it. There's something about Me and drywall just don't get along. Like every time I've got to hang something that, more than just like a picture that doesn't have to go into a stud or whatever, there's just no rhyme or reason as where the studs are placed in my house.
Yeah.
They're not, 16 inches on center. Yeah. They're not 12 inches on center. They're just kind of thrown up there.
Wherever they felt like putting them.
Well, the same thing with the joists. The joists in my shop run perpendicular to the joists in the room next door. Now, granted, in hindsight, I look at this and realize there's a center block wall, so it was probably built separate from the main part of the house. But still, like the ceiling in my laundry room next door is unfinished, so I could go into the laundry room and see the joists and go, oh, okay, they're running that way, because you can actually see them go through the wall into the shop. No, apparently they go through the wall into some sort of ledger or something like that, and the joists run perpendicular.
Weird.
So I'm putting up track, and the track when you buy it from the store, it comes with like toggle bolts and stuff like that. It's meant to be mounted. There's just no way you can rely upon joists. But I also had one long run that I was trying to position it kind of left or right in the shop to avoid the overhead garage door. And I slid it to the left thinking, oh, there's a joist right here. That'll make life so much easier, because toggle bolts, they just suck.
Yeah.
Like you have to drill like a big 5/8 inch hole into drywall, and there's drywall dust going everywhere. Of course, it was 4 holes before I realized, hey, why don't I grab the dust collection hose and hold it right up to the drill as I'm making and that was like one of those, like, I am so brilliant. Yeah. Like, look at me. Look what I figured out.
Right.
Meanwhile, there's like, and of course those rubber floor mats, there's drywall dust ground into my nice pristine, just
God forbid, man, that's terrible.
I know. So now there's white smudges on my black rubber floor.
Now you need new ones.
There and like scrub it,
Yeah.
But
you should actually tell them you should send a picture to the company and say you want replacements.
Yes.
See what they say.
But invariably, when you start using those toggle bolts, they're a one and done situation, because once you slide that toggle up and it snaps open,
it ain't coming back.
You'll never get it back.
Yeah.
And invariably, you'll be tightening something up, and like halfway tight, it finds a joist and it won't go tight anymore. The bolt won't physically go any tighter. You're like, you've got to be kidding me.
Oh,
so it's like, arms straight up in the air, extending, holding this track, balancing it, wishing I had help. Every time something would go wrong with the toggle. So needless to say, long story short, I'm thinking, let's try to place one on a joist, because then I've got these, self-tapping, Roberts drive screws, just zip in and done. No, I drilled one in. I was like, great, this is going to be so much easier. And there was no rhyme or reason where the studs were. The joists were from there.
Oh, geez.
Every single piece of track that went up, there was some issue.
That's the worst, man.
And sometimes it was everything went up fine, and then I plug in a pendant into the track, and there's no current running into the track. It's like, what? You've got to be kidding me. So then you got to take it down. Well, like I said before, you don't get the toggles back once you take it down.
Right.
So I actually had to run to the store and buy more toggle bolts.
Oh, man.
It's ridiculous. But it's up, and I've got 10 pendants up. I've got smart bulbs in each one of the pendants.
Nice.
Holy crap, the amount of light those things generate, because I use the spots, the BR30 bulbs, the big ones.
Yeah, right.
And it's just awesome, because every single bulb, since they're smart bulbs, every single bulb is individually dimmable. I can change the color of any bulb that I want, although most of the filming I do is all in daylight.
No purple?
Well, now I can if I want.
If you wanted to.
If I really want to draw attention to that particular moment.
The psychedelic edition of Renaissance Woodworker.
But it's pretty sweet, because I've created several scenes in the Philips Hue app. There's several shots that you end up taking, in an average wide in front of the bench, wide in front of the tool cabinet, et cetera, and dialing in the scenes to get those lighted just right, and then no light anywhere else, which was always been the big issue for me, because there was just one switch on the wall and it flipped on all the overheads.
Right.
Now that one switch, it turns them all on, but then the tap of a button on my phone, or I've got one of those wall mounted taps, the programmable light switch things. It's pretty sweet.
Nice.
So it took me most of the long weekend to get it done, but it's pretty awesome. The last thing I want to do is, I've got a track. I ran track everywhere. It's like, running electricity in the shop when you're framing it out. You want to have plenty of outlets, even though you may never use half of them.
Yeah, a lot of redundancy.
Done, right? So I ran track everywhere, and I ran it even above the garage, knowing full well that while the garage is up, like no pendant would fit there. And I may be able to find some low profile ones, but my thought was that's exactly where my lathe sits. So if nothing else, close the garage door, pop a pendant out of the ceiling, go over, plop it into the track. So I love the fact that it's totally modular, and it's just a matter of, twisting and the pendant drops out and you can put another one in. But I think they make these like gooseneck track pendants that I think I may grab a couple of those and mount them by the garage door, and they can just fold up out of the way.
Nice.
If I need to open the garage door or whatever. But there's all kinds of cool little attachments now that have for track lighting. Like they have a plug-in plug, so you can just drop this into the track and you have an outlet. Right
oh,
there,
no kidding!
where
Power.
it's needed in the ceiling.
Yeah.
Which would be pretty sweet as well. So I think I may pick up a couple of those and just kind of play with it for now.
Cool.
But such a huge difference.
Yeah.
When I need it, there's an enormous amount of light, and when I don't, I can dial it back and I can get intimate.
Oh, yeah. Mood
a nice
woodworking.
romantic shop setting.
That's right. That sounds good, man. Light makes a big difference, especially with these, tasks where you really need to see details and stuff. It makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah, and it's just nice because they're all positionable, they rotate and move around, so I can throw the light exactly where I want it. And
Cool.
that is one instance, I guess, where having a lower shop ceiling's nice because it's just reach up and twist it, and there it is.
Right. Yeah.
But not so low that I'm hitting my head, because that was a concern.
Right.
I might actually be bumping into the track pendants. So.
I've got a couple of the LED panels here that are just high enough that it, like my head just kind of is maybe a quarter inch underneath them. And then I guess I had Andy Klein in the shop at one point. Well, I think Andy's just a little bit taller than I am. So we had a little boo-boo at one point with his head in a barn door. So yeah, got to watch that. All right, let's move into what's new. Got a couple things to share with you. First one is another Doucette and Wolf great video. This is the Pie Crust Tea Table. It's a 2-part series. Part 2, I think, is really, really good, and they show a lot of the work that's being done for the 2 tops they're making, and anything these guys make is just fantastic. The quality, the workmanship, the video, it just feels like we're lucky to be there and watch this, and it's no talking. It's just the whole thing showing the process. Absolutely fantastic, inspirational stuff. Definitely want to go check it out.
I hope it works for them.
Yeah. The whole video thing in general?
Yeah, because obviously they're furniture makers, that, and all of us are like, oh, you got to check out that page, that channel. They're so awesome. But like none of us are going to buy their furniture.
No. Yeah. Well, I wonder what it does for them, because they've been doing it for a long time,
right.
So obviously someone likes it. At the very least, they enjoy that process. Otherwise they wouldn't bother. It's a lot of work. Even if you're not talking, it's a lot of work to just document everything you're doing. Yeah. So I would love to find out from them what if they've figured out, does this do anything for them? Does it help with sales, or is this just a labor of love?
Yeah. I mean, their videos are so obviously not catered towards like, this is how you do it.
Yeah.
And even like the details they do show, I can see it from hey, look at how handmade our stuff is. Mm-hmm. Like, come buy it. So I hope it works.
Yeah, me too.
Their stuff is amazing.
Absolutely.
I like them a lot.
Look,
let's see. This is coming from Aaron. This is another wonderful Vimeo video, but it's not nearly as artisanal as some of the others. It's actually really fascinating. It's the making of a dugout canoe. And I will admit, this is an area that I know nothing about. I think you like light a fire in the log and then hack out the stuff in the middle. And there are a couple of moments where you're watching this where you ever have that moment in a project where you realize just how big of a task you just took on, and you're like, oh man. There's a point where he flips it over and he starts hollowing it out, and he's like hacking away with an adze, and he kind of pauses, catches breath, and you see that look on his face. That's the look.
Yeah,
it's like,
we've all been there.
Oh my God, what did I just get myself into? But it's really sweet. I had never seen it done this way before, where they actually dig it out and then they like put it over the fire and actually steam it apart. So they spread the log open so that it ends up being quite a bit wider. As you're first watching it, it's this really, really narrow thing. And I kept thinking, like, what narrow-butted man is going to fit inside that dugout canoe? But sure enough, a little bit of steaming, the whole thing bends open, and they've got this really beautiful dugout canoe. Did I stretch that long enough for you, Mark?
Yeah, I was with you the whole time, man.
For those listening, Mark ran away in the background. And I was basically done talking, and I had to just
Sometimes I just get bored and I just walk off in the middle of the show.
I said way more than I wanted to about that dugout canoe.
And Cremona's not here to take up the slack, so it was very awkward. No, like normally we've got a driveway side of the house, and it's kind of like off to the side, clearly not the front of our house. And we just had a delivery from the FedEx guy, and he's just like standing out there with this box, and I'm like, what was wrong with the front door? So I wanted to get rid of them as fast as possible. So there you go.
God. You know what? That reminds me. Tangent time. Vanderlist is on the show. I mentioned this on Facebook. Mm-hmm. I had a delivery. I ordered those fancy French cut or forged nails back on New Year's Eve.
Yeah.
For that bookshelf that I built.
Yep.
And they never showed up. And I keep meaning to call the company in Germany to say, hey, obviously they never got here. Mm-hmm. I was setting up my patio furniture because it's finally warm here. And I went to move our generator out of the way. It was all set up for the winter that never happened here.
Yep.
And I couldn't move it. It kept running over something. So I had to like untuck the tarp. Now, this is like a 400-pound generator, you know, on wheels with a little like toe, like the little lift bar on it. So I like lift up the bar and untuck the tarp because the tarp is underneath the wheels at this point, really kind of protecting it. Mm-hmm. Rolled up inside the tarp was a box from Dictum in Germany with my forged nails.
Okay.
And, you know, I pull out the shipping invoice and they shipped on February 1st, which, you know, maybe it's like a month later, but still it's an international order. That's totally expected for me. So I don't know when they were actually delivered, probably sometime early February. Mm-hmm. The delivery driver had to like walk around the side of my house, go through the gate into the backyard, walk around the huge rhododendron, around a tree to get to my back deck, unwrap the tarp from around this 400-pound generator, tuck it inside the tarp, and then wrap the tarp back under the wheels of the generator because I had not moved that generator. You know, when it's cold outside, we don't use the back deck at all.
Yeah.
I'm floored. Like,
who would go through that much trouble? Like,
seriously,
was it raining or something that he felt he needed to cover it?
I have no idea.
How weird.
Let's just say my nails have been there for like 2 months.
Nice.
Underneath the tarp in the back.
Jeez, dude, that's crazy.
Wow. I have no words to. I ran in the house immediately. I was like, Heather, you're not going to believe what I just found on the deck. She's like, I don't want to know. I don't want to know what you found on the deck.
Yeah. Oh, that is really weird.
Okay. A whole bunch of forged nails now. Fancy French ones.
Oh, there you go. Now you got your collection started. Okay, last one we have here in the What's New section is a reclaimed audio episode. I was had the good fortune of being a guest on there. I don't think I mentioned it last week. At least I don't remember mentioning it. Or I can't remember when it happened. Things are all kind of blurring together at this stage of my life. And so I did a guest appearance on Reclaimed Audio. Go check it out. It was a lot of fun. Those guys were a hoot to hang out with. Doing a lot of guest podcasting these days. It's fun.
Yeah, I see that. You're such a podcast.
I'm busy, man. I'm busy.
Podcast.
Podcast. Oh, by the way, I got a horse butt strop. Yeah, I really couldn't make the connection between that and my horse butt strop, but here it is. It came in. It smells like leather. I really enjoy that, so I'm gonna put it to use. See if it's all what you guys claim it. There's a word for that. If it's what it cracked up to be, is that the right way to say that?
Sure.
Okay, sounds good to me. When you're podcasting, things just don't come out or sound right the way you want them to. It's really weird. All right, so we finished What's New. Let's get into our kickback here. I actually have quite a few. So first one here is from Kurt Pierce. He says, I'm a 24-year-old carpenter in Busselton, which is in the southwest corner of Australia. I work for a construction company who specializes in homes, basically $1 to $10 million. Even though I'm on the general construction side, I work for a construction company. Why am I reading the same thing twice? I think I might have typed that weird. Let's see. Of carpentry, even if it is working on the higher end of the scale, quality tools, timber, and designs. I enjoy listening to your podcast as I work, and it has been a pleasure to learn about the other side of working with timber. In regards to your festool out in the wild question, there is no lack of it here, but people only tend to bring it out when they're feeling a bit fancy. So that's when they want to woodwork with their pinky out, I guess. And make sure you hold the track saw down and hold your pinky out at the same time. The most common tools used by our carpenters are the plunge saw, Capex drop saw, Rotex sander, vacuums, and planer in that order. But like I said, they don't come out every day. And the number one rule is don't touch another guy's festool gear. Some toys aren't meant to be shared. So we actually got a lot of feedback about this. We've got another kickback here and a few more on this topic and also on the website. So if you go to the website, you'll see other people who left some great comments about this. But we'll get back to this topic in a minute.
Okay, good to know. Mm-hmm. This one's from Alex. He says, when I was deployed to an area with not a lot of trees, we would always have shipping crates, pallets, all the furniture that was broken for some reason, and that my source of material, that was my source of materials for building furniture. Using a couple of cheap Japanese hole saws, what? Learn to write, people.
Japanese hole saws, nephew's chisels.
Hole saws is possessive.
It is.
You
just have to ignore that part.
Using a couple cheap Japanese hole saws nephew chisels.
Yes, exactly. I've heard of that brand.
He used a couple of cheap Japanese hole saws.
Yeah.
A chisel belonging to his nephew, a mallet, and 2 wooden handle screws, and a few marking. Man, this just gets worse. You could build a lot of stuff with a few tools.
Just go with it.
A block plane, sharpening stones, and a router plane also come in very handy. Well, there you go. Mm-hmm. It was good to know. See, so if you're in someplace with no trees, break furniture.
Break some furniture. Go steal some pallets. Yeah.
And steal chisels from your nephew. Japanese
hole saw chisels. Right. All right. Next one is from Grant Feldman. He says, again, in response to Festool in a Wild, have just completed major renovations on the house, and the only crew to use Festool were the guys that built and installed the kitchen. But they all had Festool. Everyone else, plumbers, electricians, etc., used other brands. It's interesting.
Do they have a plumbing line, a Festool plumbing line? The Festool pipe cutter?
I don't think so. Maybe just their multi-tool.
Festool pipe stretcher?
Yeah, I'm sure if anyone's going to come up with that, they would.
Nice. All right. This is from Christian. He says, Hi, Christian.
Hi.
Regarding Festool used by professionals here in Germany, here in Russia, here in Germany, all contractors, carpenters that worked around our house used Festool or Makita stuff. They especially used Festool Capex vacuums, track saws. The kitchen guys love them. And products from the drywall lineup. They used Makita for smaller tools like drills. As I grew up in a Bosch and AEG family, back when AEG was quality stuff, we have more Bosch than anything else, except for the track saw. There is no better saw in this regards than the Festool ones. Thanks for the podcast. It makes my work less tiring. Very nice, Christian.
There we go.
So there we go. Apparently, Festool gets used by people.
Some people are using them. It seems like it, but it only ventures into the finer parts of the home building and on-site construction process. So like the closer you get to finished products and fine woodworking, quote unquote, it seems like the more you're going to see those things appear. Which makes sense. Makes total sense. Okay, we don't have any voicemail here today, but if you want to leave us one, you can get us on Skype, and our username there is woodtalkonline. You could also just send us a voice memo from your phone and send that to woodtalkonline@gmail.com. All right, so we got a couple emails. Wade Naziri wrote in. He says, question about finishes in general, but armor seal specifically. I made the mistake of buying a gallon. I've used most of it, but the last 25% is taking forever. I noticed there is a layer of cured finish at the top with liquid finish below. Number 1, does the cured portion impact the composition of the remainder? And number 2, is it wise to use the finish below the hardened cured layer? Thanks, Wade. Okay, so, I mean,
here's known as the soup skin.
Yes, the pudding skin singles. It's from Seinfeld. Okay, so if you, I think that's generally a bad sign. Like once that happens, I think the amount of time before that entire can is just like sludge and schmutz, as we say, is going to be very short. So you probably want to use it fairly quickly. You might find that the consistency is a little bit thicker, but I think the most important thing is you need to make sure that it's going to cure. So before you use it, take a little sample out, get a piece of plywood or some piece of scrap and coat it, and just make sure it dries within that 24 period that you expect it to. If there's any curing issues with it, then you're going to want to avoid it. But if it does cure, you're okay. So if you find that the stuff is a little bit thicker, maybe some of the thinner has evaporated as part of that cure process, you can just take that skin off, put a little mineral spirits in there, dilute it down just a little bit so it's easier to apply, and put it on your project. But again, test it first. You got to make sure it's going to do what you expect it to do. But the fact that you are seeing that hardening in there kind of means that you're on your way to losing that finish if you're not careful. And also, you might want to invest in some Bloxygen or some compressed argon so you can actually avoid this from happening or potentially avoid it from going through that last stage, though it's still going to be a little bit of a fight now that it's already begun.
So I can attest to that. I bought a gallon of EnduroVar a while ago, and I've been like spraying the Bloxygen stuff in there, and it's still good. It's good stuff. No cool. Soup skin.
No soup skin. No pudding skins. Oh, too bad. George likes them.
Let's see. This one's from Connor McClure. He says, I recently moved, and in packing and unpacking, I had to make tough decisions about what to keep, quote, for that thing I want to make. Have you guys ever reached a breaking point where it's just easier to give up the ghost, let go of a project or idea, hardware, tool, because it's just in the way? And if so, did you end up just buying whatever that thing was to do the project later? So this goes a couple of ways. I've had tools that I bought specifically to, I want to get into that aspect, or I want to incorporate that in a new project. And it never happened. And finally I just sold the tool.
Yeah.
My scroll saw is a good example of that. And my attempts to kind of get into marquetry. It was probably a Woodworks episode that I watched. I was like, you know what? That double bevel thing's awesome.
Been there, done that.
Scroll saw.
Yeah.
And, I've played around with marquetry a little bit since then, but I kind of went the whole hand tool route in the intervening time. So finally, I just sold the scroll saw. Mm-hmm. All this, I think every woodworker can say this when it comes to wood. I bought that piece of wood because I'm going to use it for something very, very specific. This happens a lot for me with turning. I'll pick up just some crazy, like exotic wood that I never even knew existed and save it for, I'm going to make something out of that. And then eventually one day you just either break down and, I had this gorgeous, gorgeous figured piece of like ridiculously figured maple. There was more curl than not on this thing. And I kept thinking, it'd be cool to make like a really cool chisel handle out of it one day. And then I thought, no, I should do something more than that, something to take out of the shop. And finally I ended up cutting into smaller pieces and I turned small gifts out of it. I hung on to this big long blank thinking I'm going to use it, make a pool cue or something like that.
Sure.
And I ended up chopping it into small pieces and using it to make gifts one year because I didn't feel like going and finding more lumber for it. So It happens all the time. Have you ever given up on a project, Mark?
Can't say that I have.
I can't bring myself to do that. I've thought about it, seriously thought about it many times. But no, if I've started it, at least if I've gotten to a joinery stage, it may get set aside for a long, long time, but I will usually finish it. Yeah. It might look different than what it had originally intended to look like, but I've never given up on it.
Yeah, there's always course corrections as you go. But yeah, I don't think at this point that, the way I look at it is even if it's not up to my standard, someone will want that thing. There's always a reason to keep going and just at least get a finished product, and then maybe you'll make it better the next time. But completely scrapping a project and just saying forget about it, never really happened. That would be quite depressing. Okay, let me see if there's any questions in the chat room. I see, let's see. Jeremy Ridley says, just joining the stream. Looks like Mark won the No Mona campaign. That is right. Yep. I did. No, my dog didn't escape. Someone's asking. We actually got a second rescue dog. So we have a dog named Tormund, who is a 3-year-old red Doberman. And now we got 2 reds, and they are quite the pair, those two. They're quite happy together, which is pretty cool. Really enjoying them.
That's awesome. That way Millie doesn't have to worry about stepping on the little min pins and crushing them.
Exactly. No, instead they just step on my vegetables in the garden in the back, which is always fun. Okay, so if you want to catch the email extra, which we are just about to record very soon here, $4 and higher patrons will get access to that directly on the Patreon website. You could even subscribe to the RSS feeds there, so you get it all in one place, including the regular show and the weekend show, which is kind of a nice feature. And let's see, what's the topic? What are we talking about? Oh, getting into the woodworking groove. So someone asked us a question related to that moment when everything's just going right and the shavings are flying and you just feel like you know what the heck you're doing and having a good time. We're going to talk a little bit about that aspect of what we do.
And the ensuing crash afterwards.
That's right. It's always going to end poorly when things are going that well. All right. So if you want to support the show, you can head to twwstore.com and you can find Wood Talk t-shirts there. You could set up a sort of a recurring donation over at Patreon, patreon.com/woodtalk. You could even leave us a review in the iTunes store and we might read it on the show. And Shannon, why don't you give them that contact info and we'll get out of here.
Cool. If you want to tell us just how bad the show was without Matt Cremona, we welcome that feedback because we defy the No Mona campaign here. We want Mo Mona.
Mo Mona?
Mo Mona.
How dare you?
So, yeah, you can tell us all that. You can leave us a voicemail on Skype. Username is WoodTalk Online, or you can call us at 623-242-5180 or use the contact form at woodtalkshow.com/contact, or just leave a comment on the page or on the Facebook page or any other things. You can find us. We're around. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Good.
Well, thanks for listening, everybody. We'll catch you next time.
Okay, bye.
Okay. All right. See ya.
See ya.
Okay, folks in the chat room, if you want to stick around, we're going to actually record the weekend show first, and then we will close off the live stream and record our email extra, so you can get a little. That was for all of you, and you can get
Dan
yourself.
had a question. You were too late, Dan.
Too late, Dan.
Too late.
Snooze, you lose. Okay, what's the next one? Where are you? Finally got the diarrhea situation under control. Not mine, the dog's.
It's like, there is a point where you're supposed to keep things to yourself, Mark.
Oh, sorry. It just slips out. Pun intended.
Boom.
So these two dogs, man, they were just pooping everywhere. And thank God we have a rug doctor to clean it all up because it was a mess. So Millie had her teeth pulled. So she was on antibiotics, and that just wreaked havoc on her system. And then the new dog came in, and I don't know what the heck happened to him, whether it was nerves or what, but his system just went haywire. So they're both on, probiotic medication and antibiotics and bland diet and all that stuff. And they're finally turning things around a little bit. But oh my gosh, man, for a few days, my life was just a never-ending sea of diarrhea.
Yeah, that's how Kenny was when we got him. He has some sort of intestinal, because he was, abandoned as a tiny little puppy and wasn't weaned too early. He just wasn't weaned. He was just taken at birth and thrown in a pillowcase and dropped off at a shelter. So he had all kinds of issues, and he was on bland diet. I contend that's why he's so little. He's he looks like a lab, and he's got border collie in him, which is he's going to be smaller, but he's still way small. Yeah. It's because he didn't get any essential vitamins and nutrients or anything when he was growing up. So yeah, he's on a special prescription diet now because we're just rolling in the dough.
That's always fun, spending $70 for a bag of dog food.
They heard I was friends with somebody who had Honda money, so they just said, "Hey,
you can afford this stuff."
$70. That's cute, Mark.
Well, I pay about $50 for my bags, and that's fairly premium dog food level, but I can't even imagine the special vet
I have
only
to go to the
stuff
vet to get it. Just that ought to tell you something.
Damn, dude,
you can't buy it at the store. You got to specifically go to the vet. But you know what? The vet bills are much, much lower now than they were before.
Yeah.
But yeah, you give him anything other than that food. Give him a French fry, and nope, Kenny's going out front. And
oh man,
he's splattergasted.
Splattergasted. I like that. We should get that one made up. Okay, we're ready to do this. Did you see the topic? I just kind of threw it in there. We never talked about it, but we'll just make it up as we go like we usually do.
Yep.
If there's one thing we can do, it's fill time.
Yeah. A scene when Mark runs off screen.
Yeah. You do a little stretch action here. All right. Here we go.
Welcome to the Wood Talk Weekend Show. It's time to unbutton those pants, crack open a fresh grape soda, and let the soothing sounds of Mark, Shannon, and Matt caress your ear holes.
All right, it's Wood Talk number 370. That isn't right. 376 for April. I got to check all this stuff because I think Cremona got it all wrong. Nice job, Cremona.
Way to go.
What a jerk. 376 for April 21st, 2017. And it's a weekend show. And unfortunately, Matt is still not here for this show. And again, we wish him well, but we do miss his singing of the weekend show sort of thing that he always does in the background. It's kind of lame with
general unkempt hairiness.
That's right. Totally hairy. That guy's a hairy beast. Like I should talk. Okay. So we got a question here. This question came from Chris Allen. He says, what are your respective end games? Do any of you have a final goal in mind, or do you just let your business grow organically, allowing them to adapt to the ever-changing demands of content production? So I'm going to let you go first, Shannon. We didn't really have a lot of time to think about this, so let's just, kind of freewheeling it here a little bit. But first of all, do you have an end game with all of this?
That sounds so official.
It does.
It's like having a business world plan. Domination, Lex Luthor style.
Take over the world.
I'd like to keep the business going to the point where I'm not living in a van down by the river. That would be good to know. But I mean, I think it's a matter, he kind of says it, letting it grow organically and allowing it to adapt, because you have to.
Yeah, if you don't, then there is no business.
The goal is not to keep doing this till I'm 85 years old, certainly. The goal is to eventually retire. Of course, will I ever retire? I doubt it. I don't know. Of course, no one's going to want to watch me when I'm 85 years old.
They might. You never know, because everyone who's watching you now will also be 85 years old.
That's true. That's very true.
Or a lot of them,
imagine
at least.
how much slower a woodworker I'll be then, considering how slow I am now. But
you're like, good news, everyone. I'm buying a power tool.
It's hard to kind of lay it out there because the end game is still so far off for me. I mean, I'm still thinking next move and actually doing this full time. So in some respects, the end game is just to actually do it full time. But eventually there's going to be a move involved for us physically, because apparently that's what you're supposed to do.
Colorado, baby.
It's to change shops.
We got space for you.
Multiple times. I hear that.
It's expensive, but there's space.
I think I could eventually see getting to a place where I could do both virtual as well as in-person instruction.
Yeah,
I would enjoy that. I really enjoy kind of getting in front of people, whether it was at Woodworking in America, whether it was actually teaching in a class, whether it's speaking at a conference or something like that. There is something to be said about that face-to-face interaction.
Sure.
But there's also something to be said about not having the face-to-face interaction.
Right.
So being able to have the ability to do all of it, and then kind of parsing out parts of your life for that. But I think what I would ultimately want to do is have it be like a destination type thing. Mm-hmm. If you're going to take a class, you don't want to go to Maryland.
Yeah.
Offense to the other Marylanders. But, there's something to be said about going to Roy Underhill's school, because what's the name of the town? Pittsboro, North Carolina, is a cool little kind of country store type town. It's got a fair amount of ambiance around it and everything. It's kind of neat. Mm-hmm. But there's also the thought of like going to see Andy Chidwick or whatever. He's not in Montana anymore. But that whole idea of like woodworking class / destination, I think it'd be kind of fun. So there's the end game. Certainly not ending the virtual content, but expanding to that sounds so retro, right? Back to a brick and mortar idea.
Right. Well, I think for me, it's a little bit of a challenge to put my finger on exactly what the end game would be, because I think the end game ultimately is probably when I can just kind of do what I want to do. But the problem is what I love to do is so intertwined with what I have to do that at this stage right now, I can't tell the two apart. You know what I mean? And that's kind of weird. That's when people always talk about like, oh, don't do what you love for a living because you'll grow to hate it. And for some people that may very well be true, but for me, it's not. I really do enjoy a lot of the aspects of what this job requires of me. So it's actually a little bit tricky. I'd have to sit down and go through some kind of mental exercise if I were in a position to finally pull back a little bit. Maybe I don't need to make as much money. My family's secure. I feel good about everything. And I would have to figure out, what do I want to pull back on? Because I could never say, oh, I'm just never going to publish anything ever again. I get so much satisfaction out of making content that, just like, would you ever stop going to the shop? Do you ever plan to hang up your tools and never go back into the shop?
Right.
I don't think so, right? As long as you have the ability, we will probably, for the rest of our lives, do this. So the content is almost the same thing. As long as I have the ability to do it, I'm going to. Now, what might change, I guess, is the way I internalize feedback from these things. Right now it is a concern, but if I'm at a point where I just don't have to care anymore, you might see a different side of me, where I'm not trying to be PC. I'm not trying to do anything other than just say, here's what I'm working on. Suck it up if you don't like it.
I'm trying to picture that side of Mark, because it seems like you're pretty vocal already.
so maybe I'm already there. Maybe that's why I'm having such a good time.
Yeah, what does that side look like?
It's going to be pretty awful. I just want to be like, look, F you guys, I'm going to go eat some cake. That's where my life is going to be. That's retirement for me.
but you know what? I mean, that's a great position to be in, and I think that's why it's difficult. I mean, I feel you and everything you're saying.
Yeah.
the one difference that would change for me is being able to do this all the time. That's the stress for me, is having to balance that. And don't get me wrong, I like what I do. There's a reason that I'm still working for the lumberyard, and it's not just the lumber, although that's nice. But the being able to do the content and working in the shop full time would be nice. And I would think, why would I want to stop this? Why does there have to be a next stop, a next end game or whatever?
Yeah.
So.
Well, we do have a financial advisor, because we do take our investments very seriously, and we don't know a whole lot about it, so sometimes we need help. But when we sit down and talk about things like our retirement goals, it's one of those things where she'll ask us, at what point do you expect to retire? And most people at the point of retirement will cease their primary income, right? They're going to go to some retirement level income. And my expectation, I'm going to plan for that. I'm going to plan to retire like most people do, and I'm going to plan for income to stop. But if I've built this business properly and I continue woodworking, even if I'm not doing content, I still may be able to build furniture for people and have supplemental income throughout retirement that will just make life a little bit easier. So that's always my plan is to sort of aim for something, but hopefully it's not like, if you think about the kind of businesses we've built, again, we are doing inside baseball in this show, obviously. But the way these businesses are built, even if you stop producing content, it isn't like the monetary aspects of it, just they're going to completely shut down the day you stop.
Right.
It'll be a slow taper, and it certainly will decrease, but it isn't going to completely stop. So if you go into this retirement mode, there could still be income coming into the business to help supplement what you're doing during retirement. So that's kind of what I'm hoping for.
Yeah. And, I think we began, financially speaking, like tightening. I don't want to say tightening the belt, because that indicates hardship or whatever.
Sure.
We began scaling back, downsizing.
Just making some smart choices.
Yeah, we just realized there are things that we just don't need anymore, and we're basically operating on retirement style budget now, having paid everything off and trying to minimize expenses, and saving for things like vacations and such. And we're not in it's a great situation to be in, frankly, because you can look at it and go, all right, here's all we have to do to maintain, the style of living, the whatever you're accustomed to. So extrapolate that 20, 30 years into the future. It gets kind of exciting when you look at it that way.
Sure. Dan in the chat room says, oh man, I can only imagine what a 67-year-old Mark would look like on YouTube. And here's the funny thing. That is funny to think of ourselves as old men doing this, 20-some, 25 years, 30 years in the future, if we're lucky. So it's really hard to imagine that now, but everyone that enjoys doing what we do, it's going to be interesting to see how this evolves. We're, like I said, hopefully most of us will be able to get old and we'll have that privilege. Are we just going to stop making videos? Or is there going to be a sort of elderly contingent of the online woodworking community that's still out there producing content?
Right. Well, and I think one of the reasons we have a hard time imagining that is think about 10 years ago. Because YouTube's 10 years old. It's more than that now. It's probably close to 11, but you get the idea.
Yep.
We have trouble imagining, a 62-year-old Mark, because you just turned 40, didn't you? Happy birthday, by the way.
Thank you.
So, 22 years from now, to think that we would still be doing exactly what we're doing is just ludicrous.
Yeah.
There's just no way. That would mean a total technological innovation stoppage. And while woodworking may not change, because let's face it, it's pretty much been the same for millennia. There's some new tools and stuff that come around. Rarely does it completely turn the world on its head. Some might say the domino did that, but really the domino is kind of a biscuit joiner on steroids.
No, it's not.
Shut up.
You're part of the problem, Shannon.
No.
La 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 la.
So the content we actually create, but the delivery method and the style. Look at how the content has changed in 5 years, and the quality and Jay Bates always comes to mind, because he's got the signature Jay where he steps into the frame while he's working, and then other Jay steps in next to him and comments on what other Jay is doing. Think about that 10 years ago. oh my God, what cinematography trickery did you do that? And it's like,
multi-million-dollar production
in Adobe Premiere now,
Yeah, exactly.
Click, look, there we go. That was easy, So how will technology change to change the production? Are we going to be in VR in 10 years? Who knows? So I think it's a matter of adapting your business model to whatever
we're going to have to. I mean, the other thing is what naturally tends to happen, and a lot of us don't want to admit that it happens, but people do get stuck in a particular technological or, I don't know, there's just different aspects to it where people just get stuck. Think about music, right? I haven't really paid much attention to any modern music. I've been stuck in like 90s punk rock and ska, and like that's where my brain is. That's what I enjoy listening to. And I hear like Nicole will sit me down and force me to listen to stuff once in a while, so I'll recognize it. But most of the time, I just don't pay attention because I don't care. And I think that there's going to be a certain point where, as older people, we may not necessarily understand the new technology and how content is being delivered. So we'll just do what we know, and then we will slowly fade out, doing whatever it is that the last thing we learned, so that we then have to ask, our grandkids to come over and help us program the VCR, that type of thing.
Right. Which is why I think the move backwards and eventually opening, a brick and mortar idea could be fun but I'll put a spin on it. Mm-hmm. Come to Montana to the trout streams and build your own fly rod in the shop, and then we'll go fishing from there.
And that just
after we make our dugout canoe.
Well, there you go. Right. And that just goes back to the financial stability thing. If you were financially stable and you didn't have to be running a highly profitable business, you could just make a small profit and keep that business alive just doing what you love to do.
Right, because there's nothing less profitable than a woodworking
school. A brick and mortar woodworking school. Has to be, I know some of them are doing okay, but man, does that not sound like a fun balance sheet to look at the end of the year,
No thanks.
All righty. Well, I'm going to go listen to some top 10, and I got to do some homework here.
I'm going to balance it out and go listen to Dropkick Murphys.
There you go, please. I don't listen to enough of that. All right. Well, I guess that's really about it. Thanks for listening, everybody, and we will catch you next time.
Happy weekend.
All right.
Matt's in the chat room, by the way.
Screw that guy. Get out of the chat room. What are you doing?
My shirt says Matt Cremona. I wore it in honor of missing Matt.
He was throwing a little support against the No Cremona campaign. No Mona.
It was clean, so,
Mike says, stuck or just satisfied with they are? I think what he means, I'm guessing what he means is like, are you stuck in that time period, or are you just happy with it and no need to look elsewhere? But from a business perspective, that's dangerous, right? I mean, if you're successful and you plateau, but you continue to do okay, fine. But generally speaking, as a business, if you aren't adapting and learning the new things, you're just doomed to be left behind and not grow. And that's always bad. Matt said, screw you. I think we should just record a live show of me and Matt taunting each other through the chat room. You want to do that, Matt?
Screw you guys.
Hey, screw you. You thick. That's for Matt.
Nice.
All righty. So let's do the extra show. 375 extra. We're going to kill the live stream because this is no soup for you.
Yeah.
Unless you're a $4 patron.
Just gonna.
Then you'll get the soup. All right. So thanks for listening live, folks. We appreciate it. Had fun with you. Except for Matt. He's kind of screwed everything up. He dirtied up the room a little bit. Hope Max is doing well, Matt.
Yes, what he said.
That we're talking about the dog stuff. Man, crap happens to your kid. That's some bullshit. That's what I'm saying.